Okay, it is 7 o'clock sharp. So I want to welcome those of you who are joining us online tonight. Today is Thursday, November 7, 2024. Today our lesson is the book of Leviticus chapter 9 through chapter 15. So before we begin, I'd like to start off with prayer and thankfulness, gratefulness. I want to thank God for choosing us a new president. And with that, I pray that this new president will once again get the economy back on track. It's been a long haul trying to make ends meet, or for some of you who have been living from paycheck to paycheck and stressing out, wondering if you're going to make it. Some people have to decide whether they want to buy gas or pay the utilities, and that's a rough life to live. I want to thank God for good health, a warm home, and provisions for each day. I pray for all those people who have to drive in this treacherous winter weather and bad road conditions. So I want to, in that prayer, I want to include the truckers, our truckers out there on the road. I want to pray for all those people who have to work the night shifts, and pray for our snowplow drivers. We're experiencing bad road conditions here in Colorado, and they have closed the interstate from Pueblo to the Raton, New Mexico border, and they don't plan on opening it till Saturday. So, like I said, keep everybody in prayer, please. That the Lord will keep your hand on each and every one of you out there that has to drive out in this ugly weather. I pray for our loved ones, for their salvation, and please, Lord, don't give up on them, I beg you, please. And those of us that are waiting for them to be saved, don't stop praying. And I pray for tonight's lesson that you'll help us all learn something from it. So, Lord, please bless this lesson, I pray. And everybody say amen? Amen. What we're going to read about again in these next few chapters are about sacrificing, what kind of animals for what sin, and why. And then he's going to lay down the laws explaining why. And he'll let you know why he called all these laws that they have to follow. So, chapter 9, and it came to pass on the 8th day that Moses called Aaron's sons, and the elders of Israel. And he said to Aaron, take a young calf for a sin offering, and a ram without blemish for a burnt offering, and offer them before the Lord. And speak to the children of Israel and say, take a kid from the goats for a sin offering, and a calf and a lamb, both of the first year without blemish, for a burnt offering. I am on chapter 9, and I want you to follow along to make sure that I'm not misleading anybody. And then if you have questions about what I might say or what I read, or if you don't agree, I want you to please let me know. Take a bullock and a ram for peace offerings to sacrifice before the Lord, and a meat offering mingled with oil, for today the Lord will appear unto you. So the people brought that which Moses commanded before the tabernacle of the congregation, and all the congregation drew close and stood before the Lord. And Moses said, this is the thing which the Lord commanded that you should do, and the glory of the Lord shall appear unto you. And Moses said to Aaron, go to the altar, offer your sin offering and your burnt offering, and make an atonement for yourself and for the people, and offer the offering from the people, and make an atonement for them, just as the Lord has commanded. So Aaron went to the altar and killed the calf for the sin offering, which was for himself. And the sons of Aaron brought the blood to him, and he dipped his finger in the blood, and put it on the horns of the altar, and poured out the blood at the bottom of the altar. But the fat, the kidneys, and the caul above the liver of the sin offering, he burnt upon the altar as the Lord commanded Moses. And the flesh and the hide he burnt with fire outside of the camp. And he killed the burnt offering, and Aaron's sons brought the blood to Aaron, and he sprinkled it all around and on top of the altar. And they brought the burnt offering to Aaron with the pieces thereof and the head. And Aaron burnt them on the altar. And he washed the inwards and the legs, and burnt them on the burnt offering on the altar. And he brought the people's offering, and took a goat. And he brought the people's offering and took the goat, which was the sin offering for the people, and killed it and offered it for sin, just like the first time. And he brought the burnt offering and offered it according to the manner. And he brought the meat offering and took a handful and burnt it on the altar, beside the burnt sacrifice of the morning. He also killed the bullock and the ram for a sacrifice of peace offering, which was for the people. And Aaron's sons brought Aaron the blood, which Aaron sprinkled on the altar and all around it. And the fat from the bullock and the ram, the rump, and that which covered the inwards, the kidneys and the caul above the liver, they put the fat on the breasts, and he burnt the fat on the altar. And the breast and the right shoulder Aaron waved for a wave offering before the Lord, just like Moses told him. And Aaron lifted up his hand toward the people and blessed them, and came down from offering of the sin offering, the burnt offering, and the peace offerings. And Moses and Aaron went to the tabernacle and came out and blessed the people. And the glory of the Lord appeared to all the people, just like Moses said. And there came a fire out from before the Lord and consumed the burnt offering and the fat that was on the altar. When the people saw it, they shouted with fear and fell on their faces. Chapter 10. And Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, took their censers and put fire therein, and put incense therein, and offered strange fire before the Lord, which they had been told not to do. And they did it anyway. Do you think these two boys thought this was some kind of a game they were playing? Or were they testing the Lord? No, what is up with people? And the Lord sent out fire from heaven and devoured Aaron's two sons, and they died before the Lord. They were burnt. Then Moses said to Aaron, "This is it that the Lord spoke, saying, I will be sanctified in them that come near me, and before all the people I will be glorified." And Aaron held his peace. Now, hold on a second, I need to turn another light on. And Aaron held his peace, and Elzaphan, the sons of Uzziel, Aaron's uncle, said to them, "Come here and carry your brothers from before the sanctuary and out of the camp," his dead brothers. So they came and carried them in their coats out of the camp, in their priest's clothes, just like Moses had said. And Moses said to Aaron, Eleazar, and Ithamar, Aaron's last two sons, "Do not uncover your heads, neither rent or tear your clothes, or you might die too. And wrath comes upon all the people, but let your brethren and the whole house of Israel cry over the burnt bodies which the Lord has kindled. And you shall not go out the door of the tabernacle, or you might die." Oh man, everybody's freaked out about what just happened. "For the anointing oil of the Lord is upon you." And they did according to the word of Moses, and the Lord spoke to Aaron and said, "Do not drink wine nor strong drink, you nor your sons, when you go into the tabernacle, lest you die. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, and that you may know the difference between the holy and the unholy, and between the clean and the unclean, and that you may teach the children of Israel all the statutes which the Lord has spoken to them by the hand of Moses." And Moses spoke to Aaron, Eleazar, and Ithamar, Aaron's last two sons, and said, "Take the meat offering that remains of the offerings of the Lord made by fire, and eat it without leaven beside the altar, for it is most holy." Now I'm going to say that again because something's about to happen. Take the meat offering that remains of the offerings of the Lord made of the offerings of the Lord made by fire, and eat it without leaven beside the altar, for it is most holy. You shall eat it in the holy place, because it is your and your sons' wages from the sacrifices of the Lord made by fire. For so I am commanded. And the wave breast and the heave shoulder you shall eat in a clean place, you, your sons, and your daughters that are with you. Now Moses is talking to Aaron. For they are yours and your sons' due wages, which are given out of the sacrifices of peace offerings of the children of Israel. The heaved shoulder and the waved breast shall they bring with the offering made by fire of the fat, to wave it for a wave offering before the Lord. And it shall be yours and your sons that are with you, by a statute forever, as the Lord has commanded. And Moses diligently looked for the goat of the skin, and Moses diligently looked for the goat of the sin offering, and behold, it was burnt. And Moses became angry with Eleazar and Ithamar, Aaron's sons. And Moses said, why haven't you eaten the sin offering in the holy place, seeing as it is most holy, and God has given it to you to bear the sins of the congregation to make atonement for them before the Lord? Behold, the blood from it was not brought into the holy place like it should have been. You should indeed have eaten it in the holy place as I commanded. And Aaron said to Moses, behold, this day they have offered their sin and burnt offerings before the Lord, and such things have befallen me. In other words, and what happened? My sons died. If I would have eaten the sin offering today, would I have been accepted in the sight of the Lord? And when Moses heard that, he was at peace. Chapter 11. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron and said, speak to the children of Israel and say, these are the beasts which you shall eat among all the beasts that are on the earth. Whatsoever parts the hoof, we're talking about animals, and is split hoofed, and chews the cud among the beasts that you shall eat. Nevertheless, these shall you not eat of them that chew the cud, or of them that divide the hoof like the camel, because he chews the cud, but divides not the hoof, he is unclean to you. And the coney or rabbit, because he chews the cud, but divides not the hoof, he is unclean to you. And the hare, because he chews the cud, but divides not the hoof, he is unclean to you. And the swine or pigs, even though he divide the hoof and is cloven-footed, yet he doesn't chew the cud, he is unclean to you. Or their flesh you shall not eat, and their carcass you shall not touch, for they are unclean to you. These shall you eat of all that are in the waters, whatsoever has fins and scales in the waters, the seas and the rivers, them you can eat. Okay, if they have scales or fins. And all that don't have fins and scales in the seas, the rivers, and all that move in the waters, and of any living thing which is in the waters, they shall be an abomination to you. You shall not eat of their flesh. Okay, I'm thinking octopus. Let's see what else. We think of something else. But you shall have their carcasses in abomination. Whichever has no fins or scales, that shall be an abomination to you. And the following birds you shall not eat, because they are abomination among the birds. Okay, we're talking about birds now. And the following birds you shall not eat, because they are an abomination among the birds: the eagle, the ossifrage, or gear eagle, the osprey, or fish-eating hawk, the vulture, the kite after his kind, the raven, the owl, the nighthawk, the cuckoo bird, the hawk, the little owl, the cormorant, or aquatic birds, the great owl, the swan, the pelican, the gear eagle or golden vulture, the stork, the heron, the lapwing or old world birds, the bat, all birds that creep or move on all fours, these are all an abomination to you. Yet the following birds you can eat: of every flying creeping thing that goes on all fours, which have legs above their feet, to leap with on the earth. Even these are the ones you can eat: the locust, the bald locust, the beetle, the grasshopper. But all other flying creeping things which have 4 feet shall be an abomination to you. And for these you shall be unclean. Whoever touches the carcass of them shall be unclean until the evening. And whoever bears aught of the carcass of them shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening time. The carcasses of every beast which divides the hoof and is not cloven-footed, nor chews the cud, are unclean to you. Every one that touches them shall be unclean. And whatsoever goes upon his paws among all manner of beasts that go on all fours, those are unclean to you. Whoever touches their carcasses shall be unclean till evening time. He that bears the carcass of them shall wash his clothes and be unclean to the evening. They are considered unclean to you. The following shall also be unclean among the creeping things that creep on the earth: the weasel, the mouse, the tortoise, the ferret. Now I'm going to say it again, the tortoise. I think the Bible made a mistake when we start reading. I want to know if your Bible says something too, okay? But the tortoise, the ferret, the chameleon, the lizard, the snail, and the mole. These are all unclean to you among all that creep. Whosoever does touch them when they are dead shall be unclean until evening. And upon whatsoever any of them, when they are dead, does fall, it shall be unclean, whether it be any vessel of wood, or raiment, or skin, or sack, whatsoever vessel it be, wherein any work is done, it must be put into water, and it shall be unclean until the evening. So shall it be. Excuse me a second. Okay. So shall it be cleaned, like your clothes, in other words, your clothes or your bags clean, you need to wash them. And every earthen vessel whereinto any of them falleth, whatsoever is in it shall be unclean. I'll read that again. And every earthen vessel wherein any of them falls, whatsoever is in it shall be unclean, and you shall break that vessel. Of all meat which may be eaten, that on which such water cometh shall be unclean, and all drink that may be drunk in every such vessel shall be unclean. And everything whereupon any part of their carcass falls shall be unclean, whether it be in the oven or ranges or pots, they shall be broken, for they are now unclean and shall be unclean to you. You cannot keep using those vessels over and over, not even your oven. Nevertheless, a fountain or pit where there is plenty of water shall be clean. But that which touches their carcass shall be unclean. And if any part of their carcass falls on any sowing seed which is to be sown, it shall be clean. But if any water be put on the seed, and any part of the carcass falls thereon, it shall be unclean to you. And if any beast of which you may eat dies, he that touches the carcass shall be unclean till evening time. And he that eats the carcass of it shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. Every creeping thing shall be an abomination and shall not be eaten. Whatsoever goes upon the belly, whatsoever goes upon all fours, or whatsoever has more feet among all creeping things that creep on the earth, them you shall not eat, like crocodiles, alligators, centipedes, bunch of legs. You shall not make yourselves abominable with any creeping thing, neither shall you make yourselves unclean with them, or you will be defiled with them. For I am the Lord your God. You shall therefore sanctify yourselves, and you shall be holy, for I am holy. Neither shall you defile yourselves with any manner of creeping thing that creeps on the earth. For I am the Lord that brings you up out of the land of Egypt to be your God. You shall therefore be holy, for I am holy. This is the law of the beasts of the fowl. This is the law of the beasts, the fowl, every living creature that moves in the waters, and of every creature that creeps on the earth, to make a difference between the unclean and the clean, between the beasts that may be eaten and the beasts that may not be eaten. Chapter 12. Still following along? And the Lord spoke to Moses and said, Speak to the children of Israel and say, If a woman has conceived seed and gives birth to a man-child, then she shall be unclean for 7 days, according to the days of the separation of her infirmity or weakness shall she be unclean. And in the 8th day, the flesh of her baby boy's foreskin shall be circumcised, and she shall then continue in the blood of her purifying for 33 days. She shall touch no holy thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purifying has been fulfilled. But if she bear a baby girl, then she shall be unclean for 2 weeks, as in her separation, and she shall continue in the blood of her purifying for 66 days. And when the days of her purifying are fulfilled, for a son or daughter, she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove. Now, this is where I was going to ask you. Every time it mentions pigeon, it compares it to a turtle dove, which is a similar bird of the same size. But they use these two names together, a pigeon or a turtle dove. Anyway, when the days of her purifying are fulfilled for a son or daughter, she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or turtle dove for a sin offering to the door of the tabernacle to the priest. He will then offer it before the Lord and make an atonement for her, and she shall be cleansed from the issue of her blood. This is the law for her that has had a baby with a boy or girl. Okay, a law. And if she's not able to bring a lamb, then she shall bring 2 turtles and 2 young pigeons. I mean, we just read that the tortoises were unclean, and I'm wondering if the Bible has a mistake here instead of putting turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. Because why would she bring a turtle? I can't understand that. It has a hard shell. You can't do much with that. So it's let me know in your Bible if it says the same thing, okay? It's the last paragraph, chapter 12. This is the law of her that has had a baby with a boy or girl. And if she's not able to bring a lamb, then she shall bring 2 turtles or 2 young pigeons, one for the burnt offering and the other for a sin offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for her, and she shall be clean. Chapter 13. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron and said, when a man shall have in the skin of his flesh a rising, a scab, or a bright spot, and it be in the skin of his flesh like a plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of his sons who are priests. And the priest shall look on the plague in the skin of the flesh, and when the hair in the plague has turned white, and the plague in sight is deeper than the skin of the flesh, it is a plague of leprosy. Now, you're going to read how we're not saying that they have to go to doctors or physicians. They're not saying that because there were no doctors and physicians. They sent them to Aaron. They sent them to the Levitical priesthood, and they examined these people. Check this out. The priest shall look at him and pronounce him unclean. If the bright spot is white in the skin of his flesh and doesn't show that it is deeper than the skin, and the hair thereof has not turned white, then the priest shall isolate him for 7 days. And the priest shall check on him in the 7th day, and behold, if he sees that the plague has stopped, and the plague hasn't spread in the skin, then the priest shall isolate him for 7 more days. And the priest shall check on him again the 7th day, and if the plague be somewhat dark, and the plague hasn't spread in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him clean. In other words, it's getting healed. For it has become a scab, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if that scab has spread a lot in the skin after he has been seen by the priest for his cleansing, he shall be seen of the priest again. If the priest sees that the scab has spread in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean, for he has leprosy. When the plague of leprosy is in a man, then he shall be brought to the priest. The priest shall take a look at him, and if the rising is white in the skin, and it has turned the hair white, and there is a sensitive raw flesh in the rising, it is a continuing leprosy in the skin of his flesh. And the priest shall pronounce him unclean, and shall not isolate him, for he is unclean. If a leprosy breaks out in a large area of the skin, and the leprosy covers all his skin from head to foot, and I feel so sorry for people who got leprosy back in those days. They had to leave the city, they had to leave their families, and go live out by themselves. Excuse me for getting off track here. If the leprosy breaks out in a large area of the skin, and the leprosy covers all his skin from head to toe, everywhere, the priest looks. Then the priest shall consider, and behold, if the leprosy has covered all his flesh, he shall pronounce him clean, since it has all turned white. He is clean. That confused me. But when raw flesh appears in him, he shall be unclean, and the priest shall see the raw flesh and pronounce him to be unclean. For the raw flesh is considered unclean and leprous. Or if the raw flesh turns again and changes to white, he shall come to the priest, and if the priest sees that his skin has turned white, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. The flesh also in which even in the skin was a boil and is healed, and in the place of the boil there's a white coming through, or a bright spot, white and somewhat reddish, and it be showed the priest, and when the priest looks at it, he can see that it's under the skin, and the hair has turned white. The priest shall pronounce him unclean, for it is definitely a plague of leprosy. It has broken out of the boil. But if the priest looks at it, and there is no white hairs, and if it's not under the skin, but is somewhat dark, then the priest shall isolate him for 7 days. And if it spreads all over the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean, for it is a plague. But if the bright spot stays in one place and doesn't spread, it is a burning boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. I guess like it's infected, that's all. Or if any part of the flesh where there is a hot burning, and the quick flesh that burns has a white bright spot somewhat reddish or white, then the priest shall take a look at it, and if the hair in the bright spot has turned white, and it can be seen under the skin, it is a leprosy broken out of the burning, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean, for it is an infection of leprosy. But if the priest looks at it, and there's no white hair in the bright spot, and it is not lower than the other skin, but is somewhat dark, then the priest shall isolate him for 7 days, and on the 7th day the priest shall examine him again, and if it has spread all over his skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. And if the bright spot has stayed in its place, and hasn't spread, but it be somewhat dark, it is a rising of the burning, and the priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is simply an inflammation of the burning, inflamed or infected. If a man or woman have a plague on their head or his beard, then the priest shall see the plague, and behold, if it is in sight under the skin, and there is a yellow thin hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a dry scale, a scaly eruption, a dry scale, a scaly eruption of the skin or scalp, almost like dandruff, but it's not. It's worse. Even a leprosy on the head or beard. And if the priest looks at the itching plague of the scale, and it is not under the skin, and there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall isolate him for 7 days. And on the 7th day the priest shall examine him again, and if the scale or the scale has not spread, and there is no yellow hair, and the scale is not in sight under the skin, then he shall be shaven. But the scale shall not be shaven, and the priest shall isolate him for 7 more days, and on the 7th day the priest shall look at the scale, and if the scale be not spread on the skin, nor is seen under the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. And he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the scale has spread a lot on the skin after his cleansing, then the priest shall examine him, and if the scale be spread on the skin, the priest shall not look for a yellow hair, for he is unclean. But if the scale has not spread, and there is black hair grown on it, the scale is healed, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. If a man or woman has in the skin bright spots, even white bright spots, then the priest shall look, and if the bright spots in the skin of their flesh are darkish white, it is a freckle spot that grows in the skin. He is clean. It's going to be okay. And the man whose hair has fallen off his head. Oh, for your information, for those of you who think, I don't know, let me tell you when I read this part I'm about to read. God's saying, for your information, if a man goes bald, here's your answer. If a man or woman has a skin bright spot, no, here we go. Excuse me. And the man whose hair has fallen off his head and is bald, he is clean. And if only his forehead is bald, he is clean. You know those men that just have hair right around the sides? It's okay, he's clean. Don't judge the man. And if there be in the bald head or forehead a white reddish sore, it is a leprosy sprung up in his head. And the priest shall look at it, and if the rising of the sore is white reddish in his head, as the leprosy appears in the skin of the flesh, he is a leprous man and is considered unclean. The priest shall pronounce him utterly unclean, for his plague is in his bald head. And the leper in whom the plague is, his clothes shall be torn off, his head made bare, and he shall put a covering on his upper lip, and shall cry out, "Unclean, unclean," whenever someone comes close to him. For as long because leprosy is very, very contagious. And once you've got it, you're doomed to die with it, and it just progressively gets worse. But it's so contagious that they would send them out to their own little camp somewhere, and they have to live all by themselves, like in mountains. But they could not ever come back home. They could never come back to the temple. They could never come back to the city where all the children of Israel were. And so anytime somebody came near them, they had required by law to holler out, "Unclean, unclean." In other words, warning, warning, I have leprosy. For as long as the plague is in him, he shall be defiled and is unclean. He shall live alone somewhere outside the camp. The clothes also that the plague of leprosy is in, whether that garment was wool or linen, whether it was woven or knitted, whether it was made from animal skins or anything made of skin, and if the plague was greenish or reddish on the garment or in the skin, it must be shown to the priest. And the priest shall look at the plague and shut up it that had the plague for 7 days. And that includes clothes, their clothes. So if their clothes were infected, if the clothes themselves got leprosy on them, this particular instance, it would shut them up like they do with the men for 7 days, okay? And on the seventh day, the priest will examine the clothes to see if the plague has spread in the garment. The plague is a fretting or festering leprosy. It is unclean. He shall therefore burn that garment. And if the priest shall look and the plague has not spread in the garment, then the priest shall command that they wash the garment that had the plague on it, and he shall isolate that piece of garment for 7 days. Then the priest shall look at the plague that was on the garment after 7 days, after it had been washed, and if the plague has not changed colors and has not spread, it is unclean and will be burned in the fire, because it is festering inward, whether it be bare within or without. I don't understand why somebody was proclaimed leprous, just automatically burn their clothes, just burn them. And if the priest looks and the plague is somewhat dark after they wash it, then he shall tear it off of the garment, and if it appears still in the garment, it is a spreading plague, and shall be burnt in the fire. All the garment which you shall wash, if the plague is gone, then it shall be washed a second time, and shall be clean. This is the law of the plague of leprosy in garments. This is the law of the plague of leprosy on a garment, okay? Whether it be wool, linen, woven, knitted, anything made of skins, animal skins, in order to pronounce it clean or unclean. Chapter 14. And the Lord spoke to Moses and said, "This shall be the law of the leper in the day of his cleansing." Okay, here's another law. "This shall be the law of the leper in the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest, and the priest shall go forth out of the camp, and the priest shall look, and behold, if the plague of leprosy has healed in the leper, then the priest shall command to take for him that is to be cleansed 2 birds alive and clean, and cedar wood, scarlet, and hyssop. And the priest shall command that one of the birds be killed in an earthen vessel over running water. And as for the living bird, he shall take it, the cedar wood, the scarlet, the hyssop, and shall dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird that was killed. And he shall sprinkle on him that is to be cleansed from the leprosy 7 times, and shall pronounce him clean, and shall let the living bird loose into the open field. And he that is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes, and shave off all his hair, and wash himself in water, so that he may be clean. After After that he shall come into the camp, and shall wait outside of the tent, outside of his family's tent, for 7 days. But on the seventh day he shall shave all his hair of his head, his beard, his eyebrows, and all his hair he shall shave off his body. He shall wash his clothes, also he shall wash his flesh in water, he shall be clean. And on the 8th day he shall take 2 male lambs without blemish, and 1 ewe lamb from the first year without blemish, and 2.8 gallons of fine flour for a meat offering, mingled with 2.1 pints of oil. And the priest that makes him clean shall present the man that is to be made clean, and those things before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle. And the priest shall take 1 male lamb, and offer him for a trespass offering, and the log of oil, and wave them for a wave offering before the Lord. And he shall kill the lamb in the place where he shall kill the sin offering and the burnt offering, in the holy place. For as the sin offering is the priest, so is the trespass offering. It is most holy. So the sin offering and the trespass offering are the two kind of meats that the Levitical priesthood were allowed to eat. And the priest shall take some of the blood of the trespass offering, and the priest shall put it on the tip of the right ear of him that is to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on his big toe of his right foot. And the priest shall take some of the log of oil, and pour it into the palm of his own left hand, and shall dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left hand, and shall sprinkle the oil with his finger, 7 times before the Lord. And the rest of the oil that is in his hand, the priest shall put on the tip of his right ear of him that is being cleansed, and on the right thumb, and on his big toe, on his right foot, upon the blood of the trespass offering. And the leftover oil that is in the priest's hand, he shall pour upon the head of him that is being cleansed. And the priest shall make an atonement for him before the Lord. And the priest shall offer the sin offering, and make an atonement for him that is being cleansed from his uncleanness. And afterward he shall kill the burnt offering. And the priest shall offer the burnt offering and the meat offering on the altar, and the priest shall make an atonement for him. And he shall be clean, and he shall be clean. And if that man is poor and can't get so much, and can't afford to get the animals that they're requesting, then he can take 1 lamb for a trespass offering to be waved, to make an atonement for him, and 15 pints of fine flour mingled with 1 pint of oil for a meat offering, and 2 turtle doves, or 2 pigeons. See what I'm saying? No, look, we're talking about turtle doves again. 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. And the last scripture said 2 turtles and 2 pigeons. Whatever, maybe I'm crazy. I'm losing my marbles. Such as he is able to get, whatever he can afford to get, that just bring that, okay? And the one shall be a sin offering, and the other a burnt offering. He shall bring them on the 8th day for his cleansing unto the priest at the door of the tabernacle before the Lord. And the priest shall take the lamb of the trespass offering and the log of oil, and the priest shall wave them as a wave offering before the Lord. And he shall kill the lamb of the trespass offering, and the priest shall take some of the blood of the trespass offering, and put it on the tip of the right ear of him that is being cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, on his big toe of his right foot. And the priest shall pour the oil into the palm of his own left hand, and then sprinkle with his right finger some of the oil that is in his left hand 7 times before the Lord. The priest shall put the oil that is in his hand on the tip of the right ear of him that is being cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, on the big toe of his right foot, upon the place of the blood of the trespass offering. And the rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he shall put on the head of him that is being cleansed, to make an atonement for him before the Lord. And he shall offer 1 of the turtle doves, or 1 of the pigeons, 1 of the young pigeons, whichever he can get, and use 1 for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering, with the meat offering, and the priest shall make an atonement for him that is to be cleansed before the Lord. And this is the law of him in whom is the plague of leprosy, whose hand is not able to get that which pertains to his cleansing. So this is the law of him in whom is the plague of leprosy, who's not able to afford to bring the bigger animals that are required, but they'll give him another option of what else he can bring that he can afford. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron and said, when you come into the land of Canaan, the promised land, which I give to you to possess, and I put the plague of leprosy in a house of the land that you will possess, and he that owns the house shall come and tell the priest, saying, it seems to me like there is a plague in my house. And the priest shall command that they empty the house before the priest goes in to see the plague. Everyone in the house be not made unclean, and afterward the priest shall go in to see the house. He shall look at the plague, and if the plague be in the walls of the house, with hollow streaks, greenish or reddish, which are deeper than the surface, the priest shall go out of the house to the door of the house, and quarantine that house for 7 days. And the priest shall come again on the 7th day, and shall look, and if the plague has spread in the walls of the house, then the priest shall command that they take away the stones in which the plague is in, just the stones where it's at, and they shall cast them into an unclean place outside the city. He shall cause the house to be scraped within and all around it, and they shall pour out the dust that they scrape off without the city, outside of the city, into an unclean place. And they shall take new stones and replace them, and he shall take new mortar and shall plaster that house. And if the plague comes back and breaks out in the house after that he had taken away the stones, scraped the house, and replastered it, then the priest shall come and look. And if the plague has spread in the house, it is unclean. And he shall tear down that house, the stones, the timber, and all the mortar of the house, and carry the whole thing out of the city unto a clean place. In the meantime, if anyone goes in that house while it is under quarantine, he shall be unclean until evening. And he who lies in the house or eats in that house shall wash his clothes. And if the priest shall come in and see that the plague has not spread in the house after it was plastered, then the priest shall pronounce the house clean, because the plague is healed. And he shall take to cleanse the house 2 birds, cedar wood, scarlet, and hyssop. He shall kill 1 bird in an earthen vessel over running water. He shall take the cedar wood, hyssop, scarlet. He shall take the cedar wood, the hyssop, the scarlet, and the living bird, and dip them in the blood of the dead bird and the running water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. And he shall cleanse the house with the blood of the bird, though he shall cleanse the house with the blood of the bird, the running water, the living bird, cedar wood, the hyssop, and with the scarlet. But he shall let the living bird go free outside of the city into the open fields, and make an atonement for the house, and it shall be clean. Wow. I did not know that leprosy grows on your clothes after you got it. It grows in your walls, it grows in your house. That's nasty. This is the law for all manner of plague of leprosy and scald, and for the leprosy of a garment and a house, and for a rising, and for a scab, and for a bright spot, to teach when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the law of leprosy. Chapter 15. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron and said, speak to the children of Israel and tell them, when any man has a running issue out of his flesh because of his issue, he is unclean. And this shall be his uncleanness in his issue, whether his flesh discharges with his issue, or his flesh be stopped from his issue, it is his uncleanness. Every bed where he lies is unclean, and everywhere And we're not talking about leprosy anymore, okay? We're just talking about um, an infection, a disease, or something. When any man has a running issue out of his flesh because of his issue, he is unclean. And this shall be his uncleanness in his issue, whether his flesh discharges with his issue, or his flesh be stopped from his issue, it is his uncleanness. Every bed where he lies is unclean, everywhere he sits shall be unclean, and whoever touches his bed shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean till evening. In other words, a caregiver, I suppose. And anyone who sits on anything that he was sitting on shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean till the evening. Who knows? Maybe they're talking about visitors come to visit. They sit on the same chair. And he that touches the flesh of him that has the issue shall wash his clothes, bathe himself in water, and be unclean until evening. And if he that has the issue should spit on him that is clean, then he shall wash his clothes, bathe himself in water, and be unclean till evening. And if he that has the issue rides on a saddle, it shall be unclean. And whoever touches anything that was under him shall be unclean until the evening. And he that bears any of those things, he shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean till evening. And whoever he touches that has the issue, and has not rinsed his hands in water, and he shall wash his clothes, bathe in water, and be unclean till evening. And the vessel of earth that he touches, like maybe a bowl of water where he's washing his face from, he's washing his feet with, and the vessel or bowl that was made from the earth that he touches shall be broken, and every vessel of wood shall be rinsed in water. And when he that has the issue is cleansed of his issue, then he shall cleanse himself for 7 days, wash his clothes, and bathe in running water, and shall be clean. And on the 8th day he shall take with him 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and come before the Lord to the door of the tabernacle, and give them to the priest. The priest shall offer them, one for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for him before the Lord for his issue. And if any man's seed of copulation goes out from him, then he shall wash all his flesh in water, and be unclean till the evening. And every garment and every skin whereon is the seed of copulation shall be washed with water, and be unclean till evening. The woman also with whom man shall lie with seed of copulation, they shall both bathe themselves in water and be unclean until evening. And if a woman have an issue, and her issue in her flesh be blood, she shall be put apart for 7 days, and whoever touches her shall be unclean till the evening. And I know I read this before when we get farther into the Word of God, that they used to send the young ladies that were on their uh, monthly cycle up into a house up above their home till their days of purification were over. So everything that she lies on or sits on in her separation shall be unclean. Whosoever touches her bed shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. Whoever touches anything that she sat on shall wash his clothes, bathe himself in water, and be unclean till the evening. And if it be on her bed, or on anything whereon she sits when he touches it, he shall be unclean until evening. And if any man lie with her at all, and her impurities be on him, he shall be unclean for 7 days, and all the bed whereon he lies shall be unclean. And if a woman has an issue of blood for many days out of the regular time of separation, or if it runs beyond the time of her separation, all the days of her issue of her uncleanness shall be as the days of her separation. She shall be unclean. Every bed where she lies during her issue shall be to her as a bed of her separation. Whatever she sits on shall be unclean as the uncleanness of her separation. And whoever touches those things shall be unclean, and shall wash their clothes, bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening. But if she be cleansed of her issue, then she shall count to herself 7 days, and after that she shall be clean. And on the 8th day she shall take 2 turtles There you are again, two turtles. Should be turtle doves, or two young pigeons, and bring them to the priest to the door of the tabernacle. And the priest shall offer one for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering. The priest shall make an atonement for her before the Lord for the issue of her cleanness. This is how you shall separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, so they won't die in their uncleanness when they defile my tabernacle that is among them. This is the law of him that has an issue, and of him whose seed goes from him and is defiled therewith, and of her that is sick of her flowers, and of him that has an issue of the man, and the woman, and of him that lies with her that is unclean. Now, I told you the book of Leviticus is all about laws, okay? So we'll start our next lesson. That's it for tonight. I pray for all of you to be safe out there, those who have to be out in this treacherous weather. I love you, and our next lesson will be again Thursday, November 21. So until then, good night, and I love you all.